79% of millennials believe that they are positioned better than any other generation to change the world, to bring transformative change.
Facts.
Okay, so what do you guys think? We're really excited that we have this opportunity to continue the conversations that we've been having. Today, we have the opportunity to have these incredible millennial leaders from across North America that are joining us for the conversation. Both Todd and I were really moved by the conversations that we're able to have with the Gen Xers. Millennials, by the way, as we talk about millennials specifically, are everyone that's between about 20 and 40 years old. They are the young adults of the 21st century. They are a growing and dynamic group, and there's a lot of literature that's out there about millennials, and there's a lot of conversation we've had in our fellowship of churches about millennials, but we haven't had as many conversations with millennials on camera to talk about what they actually think, and we're really excited about the conversation today. Our hope is that we can truly engage a real conversation about the future of faith in North America in the 21st century.
Amen. Amen. So looking forward to introducing each one of our guests. And Paris, let's start with you.
All right. So my name is Paris. Oh, I got to speak to the mic, right? Got it. Thanks. It's great support here. Good support team.
We don't remember using microphones.
Yeah, we don't remember that. Millennials, we have lapels. So, yeah, my name is Paris Cunningham. I lead the church in Mercer County, New Jersey. Most people don't know what that is. So if you just think of Princeton and Trenton, New Jersey, right? That's the area. I was converted in Atlanta in 2005, Kennesaw Ministry back in the day. From there, was very religious. I was going to seminary already, leading a church, like a ministry within a church, before I became a disciple. And so my studies were very interesting at the time. But I always had a heart to do ministry, especially inner city ministry, really going back to the neighborhoods where I grew up and bringing the gospel there. Amen. So I had the opportunity, once I became a disciple, to do ministry in New York City, the Boogie Down Bronx, And so I was there in the Bronx for about 12 years, worked with the campus ministry there, worked with leading the Bronx region there under Sam and Cynthia Powell and Will Ashley and Rose Ashley. And so just great people that were just great mentors and supporters of mine, and just really supported me, taught me, trained me and my wife in a powerful way. And then I had the opportunity 3 years ago to lead the church in Mercer County, New Jersey under the Riveras, Johnny and Glory. Amazing mentors, been there for about 3 years now, working with the Princeton campus ministry. Been able to see God do some incredible things there. And yeah, that's my short story.
Amen. Awesome. Amen.
How many kids do you have?
So I have 2 kids, Sean Maximus and Amina Paris. And ages, my daughter's 4, my son's 7. They're great. Me and my wife have been married. We're actually going to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary this Friday. So that's exciting. So yeah.
Congrats.
Amen.
Awesome. Yeah.
Great. My name is Kelli Smith. My husband and I serve here in Dallas, and we've been in Dallas for a little over 10 years. I am very blessed to have grown up with faithful parents. My brothers are faithful. I got to experience a lot of stuff. I'm grateful that I was baptized, have the opportunity to be baptized when I was 13 in the year 2000 in LA. And then we moved to Dallas when I was in high school. So I got to go to Texas State. I feel very Southern. That's where I feel like my roots are, very Southern roots. And my husband and I have been married going on 12 years. And we started the ministry in the youth and family training in Austin, and then moved up here to Dallas to work with the campus, and now get to work with the whole group. So it's a lot of fun. Really great. I've lived in many, many cities my whole life. I have 3 girls, 8, 6, and 4. Very active lifestyles already. Very fun household. We have a little bunny, if anyone cares. It's really cute. I think that to get to know me the best, I think is the worst, hardest, most faithful time of my life was I've had many miscarriages when I was trying to have my girls. And then when I got pregnant with my first one, I had 5 kidney stones and almost lost her. And then she was an emergency C-section. And then my last one, I was sick for 9 months, couldn't get out of bed, basically bedridden. And on the way to the St. Louis conference, had a kidney stone get lodged in there. And I had emergency surgery, and they told me my youngest wouldn't make it in that. And then after that, it was a fight to keep her born. And so I feel like in those times, God showed his faithfulness, but it was me really digging deep through those kidney stones that were unmedicated to really feel like it was a blessing of what God was doing, and a total blessing it was. But that was one of the hardest times of my life, those 6 years of fighting for my life and my kids' lives. But very grateful. They're very healthy, unaffected by the kidney stones. And we're just grateful to be here and serve God.
Amen. Amen.
Thanks for sharing. My name is Khai, and my wife and I, Victoria, we have been married for 7 going on 8 this August. We have 2 kids, a almost 4-year-old, Connor James Lee, and a girl who was born 3 months before the pandemic. So she's almost a year and a half now, Elizabeth Rose Lee. So her entire, basically, her entire living time on earth has basically been during quarantine. And we lead the Rappahannock region of the Potomac Valley Church in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And we actually just moved there in July. But to kind of get you guys up to speed of how that kind of came about, I actually became a disciple in 2004 in the teen ministry. Yeah. And my parents aren't Christians, and they were not part of the church. So I was actually reached out to by a Kingdom kid. And so I love the youth and family. I love the teen ministry. I believe that they will change the world. And I was reached out to by a Kingdom kid. So I remember studying the Bible with a teen worker. I remember lying to my parents about studying the Bible because I was unsure of how they would feel. I remember confronting did all the wrong things you do as a young Christian, confronting my parents about their sin and how they're wrong self-righteously. I remember the teen worker coming over to my house to get permission from my parents to baptize me because I was a minor. But I got baptized in 2004 in Virginia Beach, Virginia, in the Hampton Roads Church. And praise God, I was able to graduate high school as a disciple. Went to college in the Hampton Roads Church, Christopher Newport University. Met my wife in 2011. We dated. We got married. We led campus ministry together with Rutgers and Princeton before it was kind of its own thing, where Paris is right now. And we were asked a couple years ago to lead the mission team in the Jersey Shore, the Shore Points Church. And so we led that mission team for a couple years before, during the middle of the pandemic, miraculously, and really through God's providence, God called us to Potomac Valley to work with the Archers. And so now we lead the Rappahannock region of the Potomac Valley Church. So it's been an incredible time of my life since 2004, having been part of the church more than I've been not part of the church, really. Yep. And I want my kids to, experience all the things that I've experienced. Yep. And love this church, and I love the fact that we are having this conversation.
My name is Tony Fernandez. I get a chance to lead the Broward Church in southern Florida. Been there for now 11 years, all the capacities of ministry. I used to lead youth and family, and then I did campus, and then I did what we called a millennial initiative, trying to reach the next generation. And now, and then I was appointed as that's exactly right. Yeah, that's what we called it. When we got in, there was very little, small amount of young people in the church, and now, the church is doing really well and has a lot of young, exciting talent, and I'm super pumped to be able to be there. My church is it's God's church in Broward that I get a chance to help serve in. Is was planted in 1972 by the Church of Christ. So we got people that are incredibly faithful for many years, and then people who have just got there who don't even know anything about our church history. And so it's a really interesting dynamic. I have my wife and I have 2 wonderful kids. Cadence Grace is our oldest, and then Ezra is our youngest one. And we love our family. We're super grateful to be in the church. And I was baptized as a teen, and so I've hit kind of the whole gambit of like issues. I was baptized as a teen, did terrible spiritually going into my first semester of college, having to kind of think through. I went in a Hope Youth Corps, changed my whole life. I came back and like everything our church has to offer, I have experienced. And so, I'm super grateful right now to be able to be in the role I'm in and to be able to be a part of this conversation.
Amen. 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 So as we dive into the conversation, we're not speaking for our fellowship. We're speaking from our personal experiences and how we're together in this discussion. And so, I guess our first question is, from Will and I is, we want to look at the past, the present, the future, like we did with the Gen X. But then what drew you here? Why are you here? Not like flying into Dallas, but you're serving. You're engaging, you're serving your brothers and sisters. You have deep convictions about loving people and leading people to Christ. So why? What's bringing you to this point in your life?
I think it's hard to be a disciple and not have a vision for the future of the church. I think that's what's in our DNA, is this sense that like for us to be connected to Jesus is for us to have a vision for the future of the church. And so it's to be dedicated to it and to give our whole lives to it. The passages that are still ingrained in my heart, and I bet you in many of these guys' heart, is the same idea, which is like we deny ourselves, so we take up our cross daily, we follow him, and that we choose to stand up against kind of the pressures of the world and fight for the gospel of Jesus. And so, I think the only logical response of the cross of Christ is a wholehearted devotion to him. And so I think that's the reason why certainly I'm here. And I think, speaking to a lot of the people that are in my same, demographic, I would say that they feel the same way. There's a sense like this is the only logical response.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, there's obviously we're still in, it's 2021 here. We're still in COVID-19, and that's a life-changing event. It's a period-changing event. Across all generations, across all societies, but nothing has changed my life more than the gospel. Yeah. Nothing in this world has changed my life, disrupted my life, altered my trajectory here and now and eternally than the gospel. And I want people to know and to experience what I've experienced. And I want people to know the power of the gospel that has transformed my life. I came into the church at a time in Virginia where there's not a lot of Asian people. There's not a lot of people like me. And so I've always felt like outsider looking in. And when I was invited to a midweek service for the first time, I was just blown away. I was blown away by the diversity. I was blown away by the love. I was blown away that you have older, younger, you have campus students, teens, you have adults with older kids, adults with young kids. They were integrated. Like they knew each other. They hugged each other. They not only heard the message, but they were zealously cheering on whoever was speaking for the message. Men and women were praying zealously, passionately, with sincerity. Yeah. And I felt like, wow, at a time where I didn't really feel much acceptance from the world, like I was loved here, and I was accepted here, and I felt like, I'm not a part of this group, but like I belong here. And I always felt like I belonged here. And so the church really provided that kind of opportunity for me. And we're such in a time where there's an increasing polarization of all sides, right? Like this world is dividing us. It's dividing us along socioeconomic lines, racial lines, political lines, even intergenerational lines. Among our generation, it's divided along political lines. And so you got like black millennials, white millennials. And so there's all sorts of tribes and divisions.
Masks, no
Hispanic,
masks.
Mask, no mask,
Hispanic millennials.
Hispanic millennials. I mean,
I feel
Sorry. Do you feel excluded? I do. I'm sorry. Sorry for gaslighting you. But I feel like in the church,
you guys need some time to talk through this conflict?
we might need counseling after this, right?
Okay, I just want to be clear. Okay.
But I feel like in the church,
Yeah.
we can offer not only an alternative, But there can be something that unites all of us
Right.
Yeah.
beyond these lines that the world has drawn,
Amen.
beyond the racial lines, the color lines, the socioeconomic lines. And that doesn't mean those things don't matter, but we can still be
Yeah.
unified on the things that do matter. And I think that's why we're having this conversation.
Absolutely.
Right? Where can we find common ground? And I think that's the power of the gospel. That's why I serve in the church, because I love the fact that there's someone extreme left worshiping, hearing this message, and someone on the extreme right worshiping, hearing this message, and they might even be sitting next to each other.
Amen.
I hope they are. I mean, that's why the whole Jesus
Socially
message
distanced.
is social. Slow laugh. Yeah, I think that the whole message is that Jesus came to seek and save everybody. And humans put up lines. Jesus did not. And for us to enforce those lines would be not to follow what Jesus is saying. And so for me, though, I fell in love with Jesus because he told me I would never be alone. So for me growing up, I wasn't the best at making the friends and the best friends and being the popular one or any of those things. And Jesus was like, I'll be your best friend and I'll never leave you and I'll do all the things you're afraid of. And that's what I fell in love with. And I think for me, that's the core of ministry is the world is alone. People are alone. They go to other things for happiness and then they're fleeting. And I feel charged and energized to go save the world, just to offer another choice. Like you said, like Jesus offers us the kingdom and the church and the body and the believers, but he first offers us himself, which is healing and is saving. And I can have hurts and feelings over here and over here and over here, but in my closet alone with Jesus, he's mine. He's with me. He's healing. He's the one that helps me move on and forgive. He's the one that helps me. And I feel like I want everyone to have that peace of mind where they go to bed and feel like they're not alone. And I used to pray in college, like, God, just wrap your arms around me so I can fall asleep. And I prayed that over and over. My mom used to pray that. My kids, I tell them to pray that when they have nightmares, because I want the world to know they don't have to be alone. They don't have to feel all those horrible things that we all know we feel inside of us and in our heads that we're too afraid to say out loud to somebody that Jesus already knows. And I fell in love with wanting to save the world from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. That's great. That's a great question. I feel like for me, I wasn't raised in this church. You know what I mean? Like, so I come from an outside perspective. And I'm also from the South where everybody and their mama goes to church. No matter what you did Saturday night, you're going to be worshiping God Sunday. You know what I mean? Morning, like, that's just what happens. It's tradition.
All day Sunday.
All day. In some churches,
But there's
in some
good
churches,
food.
all
But
day.
there's good food.
Yeah, I mean,
If
in
you
some
go
days,
all
all
day,
day.
there's
You know what I mean? So for me, I had to really learn the difference. I think my origin of faith comes way before me studying the Bible, right? With our family of churches. It really came from me being able to see the difference between the gospel and religion, right? Like, where I was able to see the power of my bad. When I was able to see that they're like, put the mic in your face. When I was able to see the power of the gospel, because I think I've seen like religion and I've seen like the tradition of going to church and but then I go back home to my community. My parents were, struggled with addiction. My neighborhoods looked a certain way, and I'm like, I see church, but I don't see change.
Right.
And that was really big when I was able to learn how the gospel can produce change. And that's what really brought me to your question here, was the fact that I was able to see, wow, there's more than this and just coming around, sitting down, having some good food on Sunday. Like, if you really apply this to your life and to your community, you could see transformation.
At least it's supposed to be transformative, right?
Yes.
Like, I think the beauty of the gospel is that it's supposed to be transformative, but I think that the rejection that we see within our culture of Christianity is that everybody is, I'm a Christian or I'm a non-Christian. The only difference is I'm saved,
Yes.
or whatever. Because that whole ideology of thinking about Christ and the church being all about whether or not someone is saved or not saved, as opposed to whether or not someone looks like Jesus or doesn't look like Jesus, I think has really divided, especially our community of people who go, why do I need Jesus if the people who go to that church look
Are
exactly the
way.
same as the people who work at the club? It's the same thing. And so I think when part of it is like to reframe the narrative, because like hearing I'm a Christian, even in the old, it used to mean something, and now it literally could mean nothing at all.
Yeah. And it's been relegated to nothing in terms of society, what we see in media, because it's well, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, what are you doing? We hear what you're saying, we hear what you're against, but what are you doing?
And what are you for?
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I think to that point, we're at a really transformative moment.
Yeah.
Like, every 500 years, Christianity makes a radical shift. And we're right at that 500-year marker where something's happening. And there are a lot of us that look at a bazillion statistics. And there are more statistics about millennials than anything I've ever seen in
They're
my
all
life.
good.
What's
They're all
that?
good.
And they're all good.
You're the
I
best.
want you to feel affirmed.
Please, thank
They're
you.
all
Thanks
good.
for validating me.
You are valid and so
My
valuable.
truth. Thanks for validating my truth.
I'm happy to do that for you. One of the truths that I want to validate, or not, we'll see, is that 79% of all millennials believe, 79% of millennials believe that they are positioned better than any other generation to change the world, to bring transformative change.
Facts.
Okay, so what do you guys think?
You want to go first?
No, you go.
Okay, so that's not the church. That's just
That-
millennials,
that's,
right?
That's just millennials, period. But here's the thing. In the church, and this is where it's really interesting, there is a series of conversations privately that people are having, questioning, why don't millennials step up? Why don't millennials lead?
Right.
Why don't they have grit? Why aren't they tough enough? I'm listening to your stories. You're all married, love your families, have kids, gone through incredible pain. I could have stopped at Kelly's story like you've gone through incredible pain. That is a testament to your faith in God, your faithfulness, your grit. Incredible difficulty, challenges. You are either an anomaly and not normative, or there are more like you that are not being engaged. But the reason why I bring up that stat is because there is this sense that almost 80% of you believe we could change the world more than anyone else. And I don't know if you even agree with that stat or disagree with that stat, or where you think we need to go.
So here's
We
here's
grew
what
up
I'll.
with the Avengers.
That's
The
true.
Marvel Cinematic Universe, superheroes.
Did we, or is it the generation before us?
No, it's Cinematic
It's
Universe.
us?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
us. It's us.
Well,
We're
I'll
superheroes.
say this. I believe that that's what millennials believe.
Okay,
I believe that they believe that,
right. Here we go.
and
Let's go.
but I believe every generation feels like a sense of superiority. I'm sure Gen X feels that way. I'm sure baby boomers feel that way. I'm pretty sure the greatest generation. They're the greatest
They're
generation.
the greatest generation.
They feel that way, and probably Gen Z as well. And I'm sure if you polled all Gen X's, Gen Z's, boomers, it would be around 70 to 80% as well. Or at least if you asked them 20 years
So
ago.
here's a different question then. The question was, are we positioned to make a significant impact? You know what I'm saying?
I guess that's a more nuanced question for sure. But I think that our generation, this is just my opinion, and I think this group is a very self-selected group, kind of because of what we do and what we've experienced in our context. We're trying to change the world. We want to change the world, at least from what I'm hearing from your stories. But I think as a whole, from my perspective, I feel like millennials are very compliant. I feel like there is a status quo, and we have went with the status quo. I feel like now we're starting to speak up. Now we're starting to complain. Now we're starting to voice what we think because we've gotten jobs. We're settled into jobs. We've have some life experience, and so now we're kind of voicing what we think. But I believe that every generation feels like they're going to change the world. The question of whether or not we're well positioned to change the world is a different one altogether, or have opportunities to. And I'm not sure. It's definitely going to be between us or Gen Z. that are
Ooh, it better be us.
Well, here's the other thing
There
that's
you
kind
go.
of interesting is that
The world can't wait.
that you're, yeah, we believe millennial people. You said they were compliant. I think it's interesting. I think we're compliant in the church. I don't believe millennials are compliant as a generation. Millennials are, the summer that we just had was sparked primarily by millennials. The young millennial guys and women who are going, hey, something needs to change. And look, but in the church, there's a sense where we are feeling like maybe we're required to, as we begin to elevate ourselves, if we're going to elevate, we're required to be more docile, be more agreeable in order to move some of those things forward.
And I think in the 20s, we were very compliant. But now, what you're talking about, we see millennials who are now speaking up, like, hey, I don't agree with that.
Right.
Why aren't we addressing this?
Yeah.
Why aren't we talking about
and it's
this?
not all right,
Right. I'm not saying it's all right. I'm just saying what we're doing.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Maybe
but
that.
again, it's how do you convert that energy in the church, right? Like we
Right.
see it happening in society. We see that movement. This mic thing. Good night. We see it happening in society. We see it in the world. But how do we convert that in the church? And that goes back to what you shared about opportunities. I feel like what we're seeing. 2020 is a game changer. Like we know the world has literally changed.
It has.
Everything that everything we knew before
changing.
is drastically different now.
Right.
But I think that to overlook the power of engagement and impact that we see people and millennials doing, I think, and not try to ask ourselves, how can we, or why aren't we seeing that in the church? I think is it would be to our shame and to the detriment of what we're
one of
trying
the
to
things that's
develop.
interesting about our generation is that we have been pandered to for a long time.
Millennials?
Millennials. Let me
Pandered
let me
to?
explain. When I was in Little League baseball, I get like a home run trophy, never hitting a home run. You know what I'm saying? Like this idea of seventh place trophy thing is pandering.
Participation
Yeah, wow,
awards.
you did it. What did I do?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah,
Like
that's-
you
that's-
showed up. And so what's happened to is we've been pandered to, and then even I'm like within the context of the church, we're raising up the next generation. Like this thought, we're raising up the next generation. Like you've had 1,000 sermons about raising up the next generation, but we haven't. I don't know if we've figured out how to raise up the next generation. And we've had select people who have done great. And I just think there's something to this. Like we're like, I don't want to be pandered to anymore. Let's do something. Let's take it by storm.
I would say that pandering is to a select few. I don't think everyone gets the same level of pandering. That raising up is to who? Who got those participation awards? You know what I mean? Like,
Well, the thing that I'm learning, that I'm speaking to, is the church context
yeah.
of a Sunday morning lesson at a large conference. Someone
Yeah.
going, "We're raising up the next
raising up the next
generation,"
gen.
when in fact there hasn't been a next generation person speaking or whatever. And then in the back rooms, the
Gotcha.
conversation is more like, "Hey, we need to make sure that we earn it." That we earn
Yeah,
the right to. So it's kind of like it's an interesting
It's like, we
thing,
wanna
right?
do it, but
I
you
don't know that millennials know how to work hard, though. in
That's
my-
really a generalization,
in
right?
my experience, that I feel like that statistic I feel like is accurate, that we are in the state of what came before us and what's coming behind us, and social media and all of the booms that we've had and all of the drastic change in culture. We have experienced all of it, so we are in the position, but I feel like a lot of people are talking, and I feel like there's not a lot of doing. There's the ones before us that did have to work really hard, and then now you're free to say any opinion at any time that you want to do, but not back it up with your hard work. And that's kind of what I feel like, not necessarily in the church, but coming from a teen ministry where I'm 2 out of my whole group faithful. Like I'm coming out of the group that decided to not work hard, decided to not push through, decided to not do that, but have opinions on how we should lead, but not stepping up to lead. So the potential of us changing, I feel like it is on us. It is exactly where we need to be if we decided to look at Jesus and not just have conversations about our own opinion, but really what's going back to that first question, why are you here? Well, why is anybody here? I feel like discipleship and leadership falls on anyone that says Jesus is Lord. And so you don't have to have people
Anoint you.
Yes, to go and change the world. You should have that instilled in you when Jesus is Lord.
Yeah, you do have to have opportunities though, which is important, right? So working hard, the comment that millennials don't work hard is such a generalization, right?
Sure.
But like because millennials are literally changing the world in Silicon Valley. They are developing, so to say that they don't work hard is a talking point of a generation who wishes to continue to make sure that millennials don't have opportunities. I'm not saying it's the only thing, because I think there's something to the idea that the stick with itness, or maybe I could call faithfulness, we don't have. Like my great grandparents, this is not true, but my pretend great grandparents worked for General Electric for 500 years, and then they died on there, and that's what happened. But now, we work, you work for a company for 5 months, and you go, hey, I'm not interested, I'm moving on to the next thing. I got better opportunities.
It's not very fulfilling.
It's not very fulfilling. I'm not fulfilled. So I think that is certainly true, but I just think we have to be cautious about just using talking points of people trying to make sure that other people don't have opportunities. One of the reasons why I'm in the position I'm in is because the generation before me was Marcus Overstreet was like, hey, you got to take this on. You can do it. I'm going to give you all the tools you need to do it well. And I was like, no. And he was like, you need to. John Brush, the elder in my church, you can do it. You can do it. All the elders. So they gave me opportunities. Could I have failed? Absolutely. Could I still fail? Absolutely. Yeah. But I was given an opportunity. I wasn't sitting on the sideline complaining, but I was given an opportunity. And I just think he could have easily said, you don't work as hard as I do, so you're not going to get this role until I'm 100 years old, which is possible.
Which is training. You're talking about intentional training.
Giving opportunities, certainly.
Yeah.
But I think there's something to this idea that there is a stick-to-itness and a grit that seems to be missing. Yes. And also, if I could say this, that does seem to be missing, and that we need right now.
Yes.
So I think we're in the context of where we are in a time where I think there is a choice between either being a disruptive, transformative leader or a destructive complainer.
Sure.
And I have a really difficult time listening to people that only speak and don't work. Mm-hmm. I love people that complain and work. Just so you know, our staff is filled with people, Khai and Marcus and me and Victoria and Lexi, that have strong, Tasha, that have strong opinions about everything. And I'm like, you can criticize anything if you work. Yeah. If you don't work, I'm going to smile and say thank you, but I'm not really listening to you. Sure. Because there's no true strength to your argument if you're not willing to get in the fight. So as you guys were sharing your story, I was like, man, I'll get in the fight with these guys any day. Yeah. You can have a bazillion opinions I completely disagree with if you're willing to get in the fight. I think we need millennials to get in the fight. And the question is, are they in the fight?
I think part of the tension is some of the characteristics of our generation is that I think we want to change the world, like every generation does, but I think it's also the tension between wanting to change the world and also some of the characteristics that are very just culturally and generationally individualistic, right? So we want to stick to it, but we also want to be self-fulfilled, right? We want grit, but we also want to enjoy what we're doing. Yeah. And so the moment we question what we're doing, we don't like what we're doing, we have a temptation to abandon ship, not because we don't want to change the world, but because we're also trying to find out our own personal fulfillment. And so I think that's the tension that we battle and fight. And so I think it's, like you mentioned, overly simplistic to say we're soft and we don't want to work hard. I think we do want to work hard, but I think it's battling working hard for the things that make us happy, because we value.
Or the things that we value, not necessarily make us happy, right?
Or the things that we value. Yeah. And I think we value the individual so much.
Oh, yeah.
So much.
Yeah.
Over the collective.
Our generation.
Well,
our generation, yeah.
I think in addition to the individual, it's also we value fulfillment. That this is good for something. We did something. This was fulfilling.
That's why our generation delays marriage. That's why our generation switches majors all the time. Yeah. That's why our generation drops out of college. I don't like school. That's why our generation switches jobs, switches professions. That's,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
you
related
go ahead.
to that, I think we also have to kind of look at, in generations, things climb atop the virtue mountain, you know, and one virtue becomes the dominant virtue that everybody cares about, right? I was talking to Mark Kang about this whole conversation, but like something
Fellow Asian minister.
Reigns supreme, right? Like, and the question is, like, atop a virtue mountain for the Gen Xers was something different than for us.
For millennials.
So the baby boomer generation, and maybe I'm being overly simplistic, but working hard was a top virtue mountain, right?
Yeah.
And for us, inclusion is a top virtue mountain.
It is.
The problem with inclusion is that inclusion eventually leads to like mediocrity and opinions, and then like utter failure, right? But if it's overweight, right? So like every virtue has to be counterbalanced with something, grace, truth, so on and so forth, right? And so I think thinking about this idea, like, okay, what did we counterbalance hard work with? Well, it was the dominant virtue. And so it was because it was dominant virtue, it became workaholism and all these sorts of things that we see in the baby boomer generation that we don't really see in our generation. We don't have a lot of workaholics. We have more like video gameaholics, which is a whole nother conversation. But you know what I'm saying? But like
That's a job.
It could be
you
a
could
job.
get paid.
If
Could
you're
be a
ninja.
job.
You get paid playing
Well,
video
it's
games.
good.
We don't mean to like exclude video gamers at all. If that's your profession, that's your you enjoy.
Yeah,
right?
you're included.
very included
but I
in
think
this
you're
conversation.
included. But inclusion overweight leads to wild opinions with no accountability. Right? And I just think if everybody's involved in the discussion, you have people who can say, you know, all we need to do to help the church is blah, 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 blah. But they're not held accountable for those opinions because they're included in the discussion. And I just want to be, I want to be kind of aware of that what we're saying is nuanced, right?
Yeah,
like
all of it,
our
yeah.
culture generally is maybe a little bit less hardworking because the thing on top of Virtue Mountain is not hard work, but it's inclusion or in fulfillment or whatever. And that might just be our thing. That's why we have to figure out how to speak to our generation.
Well, I think it's funny
That's
that you
really
even
great.
shared that because I know growing up for me, it was always a quote, work hard, don't work hard, work smart. And I feel like that is a sentiment that our generation, especially millennial generation, have taken to heart. It's not about just working hard for working hard's sake. Grind it out. It's like, okay, is there a better way to do this?
That's right.
And that level of creativity, I think, going back to our previous comments, opens up the doors for opportunities. You know, when you have that level of creativity, then you open the door for opportunities for more people to get involved. 2020 changed how we do church.
It did.
And what happened? Now it was like, it wasn't just the systematic, stagnant, I got to get up and preach the sermon. So the same people doing the same things. Well, now we had to open the door for more people to get involved. How do we use TikTok? You know what I mean? How do we use social media?
How do I use Snapchat?
How do I use the Uber? You know what I mean? How do we live stream this? Well, guess what? Now we got to knock on the door. How do we do this more effectively? How do we do this better? And it opens the doors for opportunity. And it opens the door for more people. And I think this is what is, I think, you know, Will, you keep saying this term disruptive, right? Like,
Right.
I think sometimes when you have something to disrupt the system, it opens the door for new systems to be applied and new opportunities to be plugged in. And I think we haven't seen that a lot. And that's why, this mic thing, Lord have mercy. I'm not used to this. You know, and we haven't really, we haven't seen a big influx in millennial leadership and millennial opportunities because it's been status quo. You know, we've been kind of doing things the same way. The system has been ran the same way. And the question goes back to if we're going to, you know, spread the gospel in this generation under these conditions, in these times, what does that look like? And are we adapting to meet the needs of saving as many souls as possible?
And to your point about the status quo, I really hope and I pray that for our future, I know I'm kind of alluding myself to eventually what we're going to talk about, but 2020, like you mentioned, changed how we do church, ministry, all of that, and disrupted the status quo. Eventually, COVID's going to end. We're going to go back to church. Will the status quo be different? Reset. Or will we try to go back to how it was? And I'm hoping that we find a lane to move forward.
So what does that look like? I mean, so like you guys have alluded to, or, you know, 2021, last 10 months of 2020 were horrible. The next probably 3 or 4 months of 2021 are going to be equally as difficult, if not harder, because we're in that transition. But presently, in our situation, as we open up, what are some of your fears? Is it the fears of going back to the status quo? Is it, what do we need to change? What do we need to do better? What can we do for the next year, 2 years, going into maybe 2022 in the conference in Orlando? What are some of the things that you're thinking about?
I feel like I have hopes and dreams and like journals and color coordinate things and ready to go forward. And I just feel like I had hard times last year. I've had a hard time this year. And I haven't even had it as hard as some other people have had it. So coming through of what a healing process looks like, what grieving looks like, what coming back to just denying yourself, like you said, we have lost, in my experience, I have too, some of the traits of discipleship that I'm trying to go back to the core of my discipleship thing. And so when Jesus is like, come follow me and then I'll make you fishers of men, I feel like the next couple months are the follow me part. Like, let's follow the leader again. And the adapting, like how we do church differently, how we meet the needs differently. Sure, I feel like those conversations should happen every year. I feel like that should be a discussion all the time. My kids every 3 months change. I have to up my parenting. I have to change the discipline. I have to change what they know. I have to give definitions of what a bullying is to my 8-year-olds. Like, I have to change all of the time. So I feel like it's great that we are. Kind of a bummer it took something for us to adapt, because I feel like we should always be looking for those needs to be met. But what I've been seeing is we are at the follow me stage. And then it's, okay, let's get those back in there. Because I do feel like personally, and what I've seen is the hard work part that I was talking about was it's easy to study the Bible with someone and that person asks one question and everyone's thrown off in there. They forgot how to answer baptism. They forgot how to go back biblically, because now it's this fear of inclusion. It's this fear of, what if I say something and then they're going to hate me? And then there's all these questions instead of like, no, stand on truth, stand on something, and they will follow. It's that follow me part of inclusion does mean sharing the truth, sharing the word of God, because Jesus wanted inclusion. Jesus wanted everyone to have the opportunity to be saved, but then we take out the individual responsibility of making that decision ourselves to do the work, to stay faithful. The rest of my life does not fall on any of you. It falls on me. I would like your help, but it falls on my responsibility to do that. And so where we're at, I feel like we can talk about all of those things, but we're at the stage of calling people back to discipleship. Myself, every morning waking up and saying, am I going to carry my cross daily today? No matter what is on social media, no matter what anything happens in the world, am I going to do that? And then let me go see who I can encourage to do the same. And I feel like we went back as a reset to basics. We went back all the way to Jesus. Of his life wasn't easy. His life, he fought against everything. He was the one people were going after. We went back to going, okay, that's who we need to follow, as a nice reset of all the things maybe we were following and didn't know we were following. Maybe like the status quo or just the cookie cutter way of doing things, but really looking at people individualistic again and really saying, okay, no, humans struggle and there is only one answer to this struggle.
Yeah, you make such a great point, because I feel like, again, I feel like a broken record about this 2020 thing, but I feel not only did it like disrupt,
Change things?
did it change? I think it did. I think it changed everything. But like, not only did it like the system and how we approach doing church, but even the topics that we address, right? Because there were issues going on within our own congregations, like ministering to the actual needs of our people, like the sins that our people are struggling with, the sins of our communities. We were just like glossing over this stuff. And then we're hit with this and we're like, oh wait, racism's a thing? Wait, how do you preach on that? Oh wait, gender, wait, what do we didn't even know, how do we do this? And then again, these situations open, elections? What? What's that? Like, you gotta talk about that? But these things, social unrest, what is all, and it's like, how do we not know that this was going on all this time? How are we not prepared for this? It speaks to, we have been blinded by just embracing status quo, and now we've had this disruption. And like you said, it's kind of like we had to all go back to Jesus. Like, what did Jesus do?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus confronted stuff like this?
Right.
Oh, this is in the gospel?
Right.
How did I not see this before? Because we were all in our own space. So again, I think, and again, I keep going back to the opening doors of opportunity. Now it's like, there's some people who's like, I don't even know what to say on this topic. Brother, you black, can you talk about this? You know, you Hispanic, can you talk? I don't know what to say, you know? And it's like, man, why weren't we having these conversations earlier on?
Well, the thing is that
You know?
the way that we answer a lot of the, I think the way that we answer a lot of problems is with simple solutions, right? Like, I heard a quote one time.
You're always quoting stuff.
I'm sorry, bro.
This guy.
Yeah, that we live in a culture that has no patience for nuance. Like, nobody wants to hear that this problem is much more complicated than the solution we're giving. We just want to say, be a disciple and everything will be right. And look, that's true, but there's like so much that's under all of that
And
stuff.
I think that speaks to our DNA as a family of churches and this is what I fear, is that I think naturally we want dogma. Right? We want, here's the solution.
We love it.
And so the problem with dogma, there's not a lot of nuance to that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't speak to specific contexts in DC versus Texas versus South America, Asia, Africa. So it doesn't allow for a lot of room, flexibility for nuance. And so my fear is that in an effort to try to address some of these topics, we go to dogmas and extremes, and we lose a lot of relevance, and we lose the middle, and we lose flexibility. And millennials, we value nuance.
Yeah.
We understand nuance. We want nuance. We don't like dogmatism. So my fear though is that we lose our generation, and we lose the younger generation.
Well, when you can't speak to something with intelligence and with a little bit of nuance, to use that word again, like we basically we lose, like you said. Like if we can't speak to a difficult situation and we don't know how to say, we don't know how to speak to it, then they'll go look for it somewhere else. The thing is, we are no longer the only option for information.
Absolutely. Like, especially now with Zoom, YouTube,
Yeah, like
no longer.
right now, I mean, who goes to, searching on Zoom? I mean, amen, bro. You got a whole nother.
Can't search on
You didn't know that you could do that?
No, I
Zoom
didn't know.
bombing.
Zoom bomb.
So, but no, I hop on YouTube right now. I was talking to Nate, and he was saying, hey, the most viewed thing on Kidogo is what, or one of the most viewed things was Jesus black? Like we're no longer the only people that have the answers. So, no one has to come to our feet and go, Tony, what do you think about racial injustice? They just look online, Bible, racial injustice, and they can read whatever they want to read.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if we're not providing some helpful answers, nuanced answers that speak to this and kind of pull in all the sides and connect it to the gospel.
This is what you should think and
Well,
believe.
that's where it changed, right? So you got a generation that's like, oh, I just want to get back to just preach the word. I just want to preach the word. And it's like, okay, so preach the word to this situation. Yeah. Like preaching, and it's like we act like preaching the word is, I just want to talk about Jesus. Well, how does Jesus relate to this situation?
Jesus is very nuanced.
Yes, and this word nuance, this is the word of the day.
Can we use
The
it?
word of the day.
Nuance.
Can we just keep
Is
using
that
it?
a millennial
thing?
Is that a millennial
Nuance.
word, or is that a word?
It's just a word, bro.
That's really important.
I feel like what you guys are saying is we need to have better relationships. Like, we can all stand somewhere and say something that's very simplistic, like go be a disciple or go do this.
Yeah.
But if I'm having a conversation with someone and sharing my struggle and they're sharing their struggle, and we can talk together to move together forward, then we're missing relationships, and we're getting relationships through, like you said, you could research anything. They don't have to put Bible in front of injustice. They can just put injustice and get any opinion they want. But if we are not able to have open communications about, hey, what did you read? What did you research? Did you research this opinion, or did you just, your best friend have the same one, and so you just jump on board?
Yeah.
Having that love for people to really walk with them takes patience. That's probably why God put it first. Like, love is patient. That's real hard to do, especially when you want to move forward, to feel like you're going back. But it's the relationship and the deep love that people walked with Jesus. Jesus didn't run.
Yeah.
And people were like, let me catch up. Jesus walked. People walked with him to learn. And I feel like me personally, my tendency is to run and to go and take whoever I can with me. But what I'm learning last year and this year is that I need conversations too. I need those personal relationships to go, it was a hard year for me too. Let me hear your story. I want to hear your story. And so that we can really be that family that can hold each other's arms up. And that's that hard work, because it's hard to sit down with someone and say, let me hear your life story. And then it's 3 hours and I have 3 kids and I'm late to pick them up. So the quick answers are easy. And that's what I tend to go towards, but it's the relationships I'm
There's
needing.
kind of two things. I think what you hit on is an element that I think honestly, the fact that you're the one woman here, like speaking to that is really powerful, because that's something that certainly, as a man, I miss the relational element of it sometimes. And so I appreciate you bringing that up. I think there's the level of relationship, and then there's also the level of, is this a smart argument? Like, is it intellect? Like, is it smart enough that someone can go, that makes sense to me? Jesus was like a brilliant trainer of people, and also just a brilliant man. Like, just so smart. Like, the responses at the end of Mark with him and the Pharisees is like, you couldn't. It's incredible. We, I think, need to just grow. Especially, I think young ministers right now have an opportunity to grow in their ability to craft thoughts and present them in such a way that people go, that's something that I'm not hearing from the news. I'm not hearing from my media clips. I'm not hearing anywhere else. Like, that's something that's smart. It helps me go, and it connects us to the gospel. I just think those are two elements that really would appeal to our generation. We're talking about winning them. That would be something.
And I think it's just so important that as a culture, Christianity, we're known as self-righteous people, always looking for something to condemn. And we look at the culture and we want to police culture. We want to say what's wrong with culture. But I really believe what Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, that we are meant to be the salt of the earth, the light of this world. And we have to be an alternative to culture. We can't police what the world does. We can't control what the world does, but we can decide what our messaging is. We can decide our stance. We can decide what we're going to be. And we got to be the salt of the earth, the light of this world, be an alternative.
I think to that point, we've got to talk about our family. So our family's really messed up. Okay, so we've got, some grandmas and grandpas are losing their minds. Some uncles and aunties are doing crazy stuff, saying crazy stuff online. Some of our brothers and sisters are making choices that are destructive. And not just disruptive, but like destructive. So our family is not a family where everything works out. And this is why I'm really grateful we're having this conversation that's nuanced, So, because oftentimes we don't actually discuss things. So we live in a world, and in our family, we often have dictates and diatribes and, but there are very few monologues, but there are very few discussions. I wanted to ask you a little bit about our family. What's your thoughts with the future of our family, specifically our family of churches? Because, 2 of you grew up in our churches, 2 of you came from outside of our churches and are part of our family through that pathway. What do you think about our family and where we're going?
I think from my perspective, I think that's a great question.
Should we cancel each other? Should we just be done?
I think we should just cancel Gen X's.
Okay, all right, thanks. Thank you for letting me know that.
No,
Thank you for speaking your truth.
Overflow of the heart.
Yeah. I think here's the reality of what I'm seeing from my perspective. As I think, and this is not unique to us. This is probably unique. This is just emblematic and consistent, probably intergenerationally and from different centuries, contexts, cultures, is that I think the older see a need for the younger because they want a future. They want their kids' to have a future. The older see a need for the younger. And so I hope young people hear that. Like, the older see a need for the younger. But I often think the younger don't see a need for the older. And so what happens is that the older want to include the younger. And from the younger's perspective, they see, you only want me to do what you're doing. Or in other words, you want to include me, but on your terms. And the younger have all these opinions. and the older hears them and thinks they're ridiculous. So what's happening is there is dialogue but not communication and conversation. And so the older feel disrespected and the younger feel unheard. And so we have to be able to bridge kind of that gap, and there has to be humility from the younger. Like, we don't know it all. We don't have the life experience of those who are older. We haven't raised, teenage children. I don't think millennials have. Maybe on the extreme ends, maybe they have. We haven't put kids in college yet. We don't have this life experience. I don't think we're facing midlife crises yet. Crises. Now, hopefully not. At least I haven't.
I had a quarter life.
Say what?
I had a quarter life crisis.
Quarter life crisis.
He bought a Tesla.
So we just don't have the life experience. So there has to be a level of humility that we need the older's experience, wisdom, maturity to guide forward. And so I think if we play this right and we are very inclusive, that we really can win all generations. We can win the world together. And but I think that space, I think, is complicated. And that space is why I'm grateful that we're having this conversation, because we really need, if we're going to change the world, it's not just our generation.
Yeah.
It's going to be collaborative. It's going to be cooperative, and it's going to be all of us working together, as it should be.
It's taking the term of international churches of Christ seriously.
Right.
And adding, and probably another term, intergenerational, right? And how do we really embrace all of this? And I think that is a nuance, right? Thing to kind of add in. I just keep messing with that term. But I feel like we don't, how am I going to do this?
I'm going to
Just
take
say
your.
it.
I'm going to
Just
take
say
your.
Just say it. Say what you're thinking.
I'm just going to take over your
Just
pause.
say what you're thinking.
You're going to take over my pause?
No, just kidding.
Go ahead. You go
All right,
ahead.
I'll share something. I think related to the question that you asked, we are in need of a positive model of the future.
Yep.
We don't really have, in my opinion right now, we don't have a great model yet of going hey, look, this church is doing it well. This is what they're doing. This is how they're measuring success. This is why it's been good. And let's all kind of go to that and learn about it. We don't really have that yet. We are, in the difference between our most dynamic American church and our least dynamic American church is not that varied. Right. It's varied, but it's not that varied. And so 0.1%. Yeah, maybe more, but who knows, right? It's not 5%. Right, but the point is that there needs to be, I think, one of the things that I'm concerned about is that I look and I go, wow, if we could have a positive viewpoint, because we're all looking for people to follow. Following is in our nature. It's what we, as disciples, we try to follow people who are following Christ, or and so we want, and a lot of the younger ministers are hey, I will follow Elevation Church, and I want my music to be like them, and I want my preaching to be like Judah Smith, and I want to, whatever. Before the whole stuff with Carl Lentz happened, there was that connection there. So we had
not
this
part of our family, I'm sure.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. But there was a sense of I want to follow something that has an attractive culture to it, and I think there are some churches that are beginning to that's starting to bubble, right? And I just think we may need some time to figure out, okay, what's really effective, and then when it's effective, we need to have some humility, because when something's effective, the next logical thing, if you're not humble, is to villainize the effective person and to go, you're effective because you don't blah, 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 right? And I think we just got to be really cautious and go, wow, if they're effective, let's sit at their feet, let's learn, let's throw. And right now, the discussions are so important because we're throwing things against the wall. We're like, maybe this is effective, maybe that's not effective, who knows? But we're allowing ourselves some time to both heal from the difficulty, but also see if something's good or bad. So I don't know. I think that's some of the stuff that I look at.
I would just add one thing, Tony, is that I think there are some great examples in North America, and this is not the venue to talk about them, but I think there are some that I think
I'm not
are
saying
doing.
that there aren't great examples. There are, the Dallas Fort Worth church is doing awesome. I think there's other churches that are no, seriously. I think there. It's the point is that in terms of a overarching pot, there's it's not like we're having congregations that, like in South Florida, we're baptizing 100 people in a month, or if you want to use that metric as successful, or
It's another topic.
That's a whole nother
that's another
conversation. We can have it with a guy named John. So like like we have to decide the metric that we want to look at. But I think we just right now, what would be awesome is if we could see some positive visions of the future and go, this is different than the past because it's like this and like this. Oh, that's very helpful. And I think a lot of the young people would circle around some of those things.
Right. So real quick, you're intriguing me, both of you guys. I want to throw a little hand grenade in here, and then maybe we can talk about the future.
Who's gonna jump on it?
Is cooperation.
I know.
We are a cooperating family of churches.
Yes.
Do you see that we're cooperating? What's your view on the future of cooperation?
I have a lot of
And
thoughts.
speak your truth.
Oh gosh, please.
You're speaking for yourself.
Who's gonna jump in first?
I feel like me. I feel like there's there's a lot of communication. There's a lot of conversations that look like being collaborative, but they're not leading to something, and they're not leading us back to Jesus. Because I have seen conversations, I've been in conversations, I've heard of conversations where the more of the opinion of the person comes out, where if we are taking the approach, right, Jesus is more, we are less. So the collaborativeness, I think, needs to be a lot more. And these types of discussions are really great because we are all very different, but our end goal is the same, even if we never set our end goal. Just by having this conversation, I know all of our end goal is the same. Maybe the way we get there is differently. Maybe we do measure success differently. Maybe there are different ways. Texas, there's a church on every corner. That's not everywhere. So how we will do things will be different, but I feel like the principles we can agree on, we can go with, we can be excited and fired up about. I think we're getting stuck on hot button issues and not looking at Jesus as the answer. We don't need to go down that road, but I feel like those are the conversations of opinions. I have felt this in my past, or I've been heard over here, or I need to step on this person so that I can be heard and greater over here. Where really collaborative means let's get a big whiteboard, or you tech people, whatever you use, I still use paper, and throw everything up that we want to see and then go backwards. So what's the end goal? And then start over here and be like, what do we need to do to get to that end goal? And really that humility that you were talking about is so key, because I can only plant seeds. I literally cannot make it grow. That's always God. So success in any body of a movement is amazing and should be praised and lifted up, and everyone, because we are a team. We're meant to be the family. We should be where one wins, the team wins. Yeah. And when one is struggling, we go and help without judgment because we work together. If we're talking about a family unit, I don't single anybody out in my family and be like, ooh, they're over there, but we're all doing great over here. We are praying together. We are hurting together. We are, and I feel like we have lost that in a sense. Yeah, there's been a lot more in my experience of millennial leaders like, oh my gosh, they baptized 20. What am I doing wrong? And then we create a separation instead of what are you doing right? And then the judgment still hops on of, well, this and this and this, and you have a church on every corner and I don't. And instead of really like, amen, that's awesome. 20 souls are saved. I'm going to pray that they stay faithful. If you have any people that are looking to date, really working together and making ourselves less. Because I feel like the unheard that you were talking about earlier is making our voice louder instead of Jesus's voice louder. I feel like we're like, let's find ourselves. Let's go on this journey. Who am I? What am I doing? Like we were talking about, what in the world do we say for our intro? I don't know. Who am I? What do I? But I really want to see and long for and want my girls to grow up knowing that there's people out there that love Jesus, that will put him first and not themselves, because that's not in the world that they are viewing. And if we're going to be collaborative as a movement of churches, then by golly, we're going to put ourselves to the side to make Jesus more.
Yeah, I think.
I don't know if that answered it, but that's what I was feeling.
That's good. I feel we're gonna have, in order to really like see the fullness of collaboration, we got to divorce ourselves from tribalism, which is very difficult.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, I think we all have
One
different.
tribe.
Yeah, we have to embrace a one tribe concept.
tribe.
But right now, we are many tribes.
Right.
Right?
And
You know,
multiple tribal
we-
leaders.
Yes, we have multiple tribal leaders, right? And I think that's the space that we operate in. But I do, and I'm being a little hopeful here. I feel like this conversation, in of itself, shows the power of collaboration. Like, we're all from different church leaders, different tribes, you know what I mean? And we're here having this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm a part of different committees that I know are having similar conversations and are producing different things and trying to put out, content and tools and resources. And so I do have this sense where I see this changing, but in the process of us kind of creating these new opportunities and these resources. I'm talking in the mic. Okay. These resources, I'm also seeing, right, wait, why are we doing it like this? Why are they connecting?
More tribalism.
Yeah, you see that. And so what I've been encouraged with is that that hasn't stopped the forward motion. I think in other times, probably before 2020, I think that would have stopped a lot of the forward motion in order for us to become more collaborative, embracing a one tribe, mindset. But I'm seeing now, wow, there's a little grit where, you might not agree, but we're going to move forward because we're valuing unity. Like we're putting unity in its proper place. And I do think there's sometimes, our family of churches, we use the term the 100,000 or whatever the number is. And we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how do we, embrace it. And there's some people who want to divorce. It's like, no, I need to focus on the 7 billion, but we got to embrace this is our family. And we could move with this 100,000 to reach the 7 billion or 8 billion. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Yes, like so there's great value in this. We can't divorce ourselves from each other, and we can't just get so committed to our child. I have a mindset a lot where I'm like, look, I'm in Mercer County, Princeton and Trenton. That's my zone. I'm just done with all y'all. I'm focusing on this. This is more than enough to deal with. But there's great value in knowing that I have brothers and sisters in the fight everywhere else trying to do the same thing. And I got to remind myself of that, and I need to be inspired by their stories. I need to hear from them. I need to embrace and be collaborative with them. I mean, during 2020, I've had so many different brothers, and I've been intentional about having younger and brothers who are leading churches or leading campus ministries to come preach to my church. And I did that on purpose because I was like, man, I would have loved to have this opportunity when I was growing in the faith. You know what I mean? And so now that I have an opportunity to be a church leader, I'm like, be who you would have wanted to have in your time. You could sit here and you could complain like, oh, I didn't have these opportunities. Well, but God's given it to me now, regardless of the situation. So I've had young guys come in and preach, to my church, and they love it. It's been great. I try to bring in so many people outside of my area, and even give them a little honorarium. You know what I mean? Like just to encourage, because I'm like, that builds the unity. It builds trust. You know what I mean? And so I just think that's important to kind of value
if
both sides.
If the question is about whether or not we're collaborative, I think in many ways we're collaborative about lots of things, right? I would love to hear personally. I would love to hear more of a discussion between regional regional families, like having discussions about methodology, and going, hey, this is. I would love some quantifiable like something, some data that goes, hey, like this is helpful because it did this in our context. This is why it was helpful, and then us being able to compare and go, okay, wow, I can understand why that would be helpful or useful. Because as a church leader, I'm looking for ideas. Like I am constantly looking for ideas. I'm like, I know the basics. Let's get people to be with Jesus, to be like him, to take his message forward. Like I can teach that all day long, but how to do that in the context of 21st century America in my city, I'm always looking for ideas and how best to do this. And I can hypothesize. But if I have 50 people who are all saying, hey, we're trying it this way, we're trying it this way, we're trying it this way, that way has been effective for this season, hey, maybe we can steal some of that, spit out the bones, and just move forward. And so I think we're collaborative
people
in
like to eat
so
bones.
many ways. We're collaborative certainly in shepherding. If there's an issue with the church and someone needs addressing, I think that's fantastic, and we need to do that. But I think we are also in a position now where people feel like allowing others to have influence on their ministry means that they are losing
Or threatened.
or threatened. Yeah. Now I'm losing because they are better than me at whatever. I appreciated, I'm mentioning Mark King again, but I got the chance to speak for the Detroit church. He sent me a note that said, they like you more than they like me, and I love it. I'm like, get out of here. But the point is, like, here's someone who's going, I just wanted to bring you in and connect, and I don't care if they like you more because you speak to somebody I couldn't speak to.
Exactly.
And I feel the same, like,
we shouldn't feel threatened by that.
we should
embrace that.
celebrate it. Yeah.
And I think we are very much a collaborative church, family of churches in name, and I think that our DNA, and like most organizations, is let's find a leader, right? And so we were built on hierarchy, and I think even when there is no hierarchy, we have unwritten hierarchy in our minds,
Yeah.
right? We look to someone that, or you help us move forward. And so I say that to say we're still kind of figuring out what collaborative looks like and what that means among all
That's
these
the
churches.
family unit, right? Like
Right.
when trouble is hard, you look at dad. Or dad, which way are we going to go?
Right.
Like what
But-
it's
and
going to be as
the
a
problem,
family.
The problem is that it's the younger kids are like, well, I side, like the tribalism, I side with mom. And the other child, I side with dad. You know, and so there's dysfunction.
And then you have adult children now in the house, and they're like, man,
right.
yeah, I'm
Grown.
grown.
I want to move out.
Yeah.
I want my own
I want
apartment.
my own place.
Yeah.
And there is no, I think the thought about dad, like dad is the Lord, right? but like how we relate to him within the kind of the structure. The other thing is that I think we actually need more leadership culture in our church. One of the things that people that I know reject is leadership. But I think we need leadership culture.
Really?
We have,
Define what you mean by leadership culture.
so we need to have more strong leadership that's also humble enough to listen to other people challenge their viewpoints. Like this is a group
If you
of,
can't win the argument,
if you can't win the
you
argument,
got to be willing
what's
to
the
put.
like
What's
part
the
of the
point?
part of the
Put it
joy
on
of
the
this
table. That's
is
it.
that I want to hear from Paris, and Paris goes, no, that's not, I shouldn't think that. What do you mean about leadership culture? Now I need to defend my ideas, right? Now I need to be able to present it. But like, I would love more people who in a context like this could fight, and then at the end of the day hug each other and go, look, I love you. I want to be your friend. I want to be connected to you. But I think we feel like this in some ways is disrespectful when I find this to be collaboration.
Yeah, well, it's because we view ourselves as peers.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good
I mean, that's
And,
yeah.
and we also know how to be respectful to each other as well and have this kind of dialogue.
Sure. Yeah, view ourselves as peers, but I would also love to be able to have this conversation with Todd, and for Todd, but at the same time have reverence and respect for Todd and
Yeah.
all the work that you've done, but like been able to when I hear something push back a little bit and go, hey, like I one of the things I appreciate about my elders is that I can say to them, I don't agree. I will yield to you, but I don't agree. And they'll
Yeah.
go, okay, let's stop, let's circle back, and let's talk.
Yeah.
And I just feel like we have to get in that mindset within our family of churches. And maybe we're getting there, and it's awesome, but
Well,
I just don't see it as
Like
often.
in Dallas, our motto is it's not who's right, it's what's right. And so it's not about the individual, it's about we want to do what's right, what's good
Yeah.
for the body, not
Yeah.
for the individual. And
That's-
so also what I've seen is that when you
It's
treat,
very Star Trek.
yeah, there you go.
Boomer
Power
reference.
dynamics.
Power dynamics?
Is that
Yeah.
what we're saying?
No, you do right by the individual, God will take care of the church.
Amen.
But at the end of the day, it's what's right, and it's doing it God's way and not our way.
Well, it's
Amen.
discipling that spirit of competition, right? Like, and I think whenever you have anyone in any level of leadership, there's this spirit of just competing, and comparing. And I think when you can root that out and be able to humbly like sit, with brothers and sisters and just discuss, we're trying to advance the mission of God. What can we do? How can we be better? But that's a hard thing for a lot of leaders to, I think, divorce themselves from.
So I want to throw out one final question, because this conversation definitely needs to continue. But I want to throw out one final question. What are your hopes for the future? Like, really and truly, when you look beyond this moment, this very difficult moment, and I think a lot about Lincoln, and Todd and I have talked a lot about Lincoln. You know, Lincoln said in his second address, he said that, you know, the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty. So we have to rise to the occasion. As the case is new, so we must act anew and we must think anew. So we really do need a resurgence of courage at this moment. So I'm wondering where you think, if you were to look forward, or even if 30 years from now you were to look back, what are your aspirations there?
I want to share something to that. One of the things I think looking forward, what I would love to see, and I pray, like I really do pray for this.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think that transformed my heart spiritually was in my time of transitioning from New York, coming into Mercer County. And the fact that Johnny and Glory really was like, you know what, we believe that you guys can lead this region of the church. And this was big for me because they reached out to an inner city couple. I mean, me and my wife, we are so inner city. We've never been in a suburban area in our lives, right? In our lives. And you know, city college education, you know, like, and we're like, no, you guys could lead this suburban group, very mixed group, and with one of the, you know, top level colleges in the world, you know, like we believe you guys could do this. That level of faith in us to be able to lead a group like that was so transformative for us. I feel like our family of churches, in terms of developing really church plannings, small churches, building up small churches, I have a heart for that. Probably because I'm a small church leader now, you know, like I really see that. And I know I hear a narrative a lot where it's, you know, you want to send certain leaders. We judge things not based off competency, but off of identity. And we're like, you're better fit for this. We're going to send you here for that. But when we could evolve to a state where we're judging everyone based off competency. And that was one thing that he said. He's like, he's like, I'm not giving you a level of grace by putting you here. He's like, Paris, I've watched what you've done. You've shown yourself as a competent leader. And so God will make up for everything. He'll do that. And God did it. I mean, we've been able to see that group go from 23 to over 70 members in 3 years. Like, and that was just a small group, a small little tiny area. But that was like, I mean, I've been able to see that is so big. And I just really pray that as a church, we start empowering the next generation. Not just to take care of our teenagers and to lead our campuses, but really like, we believe you could do this.
Right.
And put you know, pen to paper. You know, like we're gonna put you in this position. And not just because you're my son or you're my daughter, or not just because you look like me, but because you can do the work. You've shown yourself faithful to do this work. I think that would be transformative. And I'm really praying to see us move in that direction.
That's awesome.
I heard a quote. It said that bad times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times, and the cycle repeats itself. And I really think we're in a hard time, and I'm praying, I'm hoping that hard time produces strong men, strong women, strong people, strong generation.
That was
Thank you.
So millennial.
Thanks for making the quote.
And it was a really good quote.
It was a great quote, and he had to make it sure that it was millennial.
For sure. And we've seen, all of us, we've seen a lot of darkness the past 14 or so months.
Yes, we have.
We've seen a lot of the evil of man and the evil of our society. At the same time, we've seen a lot of hope, I believe. I've seen communities that were fighting and rally together. And I've seen communities unite together. And I think in the aftermath of all this, there's an avenue and lane for us to unite, to collaborate, to work together, to win the world together. And so that is my hope, that out of that destruction, we can bring this message into this huge mess that we're in right now. I really believe that. We have an avenue if we don't get so caught up on self. And if we work together, we really can win this together.
I feel like, thank you. What Paris was saying is like a relay race. The baton can't, the first runner can't just run the whole thing. The whole point is to pass the baton. But to get to the race, you have to train. And to get to that, it's hardship, it's pain, it's bruises, you lose toenails when you run. It's some hard work, but the goal is to go to the race, right? To run the race. And that's what the
You're
scripture
speaking
talks
my language.
about.
Let's go.
And so I have a lot of runner things in my mind. But the whole point is to, if you have run any distance at all, is to free yourself from yourself, because you are yourself's worst enemy. The only one telling yourself you can't is yourself when you run. It's not your body. There's a point in which you run that your body already told you to stop. And if you kept going, it's only your soul that pushes you forward.
That's it.
And I feel like that's
real.
what I have to
Instagram
offer
post.
to this.
That's real. Let's go, runner. Let's go. Let's go.
Instagram story.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, she's in our tribe.
But I am. And I will fight for it.
One tribe. Let's go.
Until I die, I will fight.
Yes.
Grit.
And,
That is grit.
Actually, I wrote that word down in January. Didn't even know that was going to come up. Yeah, grace and grit. But I feel like the baton being passed is such a crucial point of why you enter the race of the relay race. That's the whole point, right? And when the baton is dropped, the whole stadium's like, but you really hope that the baton you pass is also to the ones that trained with you, the ones that are with you. So we can't just, like you said earlier, be the generation that's going to change it. It's going to take the one before us and the one before that and the one we're trying to train underneath us. But it takes intentional patience to train with someone when maybe their favorite sport isn't running, and you have to teach them how to endure a little bit more and get that baton. Or maybe they are completely different than you in every way, but the point is that you're in it together, and how my quote that works for me and works for Will may not work, and that's okay, but we're playing it together. And I feel like, at least for me, I can only do what I can do. And when I wake up, how can I glorify God that day? And if we pass that on to the generation that's after us, or our brothers and sisters next to us, or our kids, then leaders will rise up. Because you guys have great stories of people looking at you, but when I was 13 and 14, no one told me go in the ministry. No one told me I believe in you, you can do it. I mean, my parents are my biggest supporters, so great, but they weren't like, here. I had to want it too. I had to push through everything and go, okay, to my husband when we started dating, you have to date. If you want to date me, we're going to change the world. That's just where we're going to be at.
And
because
he said,
I had, and what?
And he said,
sure, great, let's go. We're still married. Sure.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. No, I was just going to finish with, we have to put our hand to the plow and move the baton down in order to see the next 30 years be where we want it to be.
Yeah, just to kind of like, where do I see the church like hopeful about it? I think we have really great opportunities. I think it seems like more and more people with ideas are like the best ideas winning, which is awesome. Like, I think even something like this is cool. You know, it's is not, no one had to go, this is officially sanctioned by the churches of Christ to make this, you know, like no one had to do that. We could pull together and have a conversation. And if something beautiful comes of this, then amen. Like, that's great. And if it flops, and that's cool too. Like, it is what it is. And I think I would love to see a spirit of collaboration where competition is kind of pushed aside. And I also would love to see strong, I loved the quote you just shared, bro, because I think we need some strong men.
Strong women.
Strong men. I think we need some strong men. Like, we need some men who are dynamic, who are powerful, who have a sense of and I just think that's something that would be awesome.
Amen. Amen. So, I'm speaking for both Will and I know Will will say something here in a second, but how refreshing this is to spend time with you, to talk to you, to hear from you. I personally am excited because if we have men and women like you for the next 30, 40 years leading, I think the future is really bright. And I'm looking forward to having more conversations, more talks, and so I'm humbled to be able to just sit here and talk to you. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I know for me, just like Todd just shared, this conversation came about through collaboration, through us just talking and through us being able to engage. And we talked a little bit about that in the intro, but I respect all of you guys as full-grown adults leading churches, doing what you're doing. But at my core, I'm always a teen worker. And I just feel like, my goodness, like you're my younger brothers and sisters that are stepping up. And everything you said, my heart was just so full. And I just feel such a reservoir of like emotion and gratitude that, the fight and the stuff that we go through, the mess that we wade through sometimes was worth it, to hear your heart and your vision and your desire to see others step up based on competency, to see others step up based on grit and a fellow runner. Let's go, to challenge us, to hear your heart, Khai. I'm grateful we're in a common fight together. I'm like, we can take it. I'm fired up about where we are and what we get to do. And to see just your passion, Tony, for the best ideas winning out, because this next 30 years, I believe, my personal belief, will be dominated by incredible contests between the truth and between the lies of Satan. Yeah. And so the courage to step in the arena in the midst of all that's happening is so inspiring. So I'm super grateful as well. I pray that you join us for the next conversation. For everybody that's watching this, join us for the next conversation. We're going to dig into media and culture, the landmine itself of all of how media and culture is really engaged with us. These millennial leaders are the truth. They're trying to do what's right. I know there are many more of you that are ready to step up, and maybe God used this conversation to ignite something in your heart, in your soul, that you see that God's calling you. We need you, and we're ready for you to step up and do what God wants you to do. The baton is coming your way. We hope that you don't drop it, but instead, and we know that you won't, we know that you'll rally to the fight. And so we're really excited about the future of faith in North America.
Amen.